everybody, and welcome to another Top 5 board gaming video. Today I'm going to be discussing games that got an upgrade when they went to a new edition, version, whatever you want to call it. That said, before I get started, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at my various social media pages as well as my Patreon page. On those you'll be able to chat with me in all different sorts of ways, as well as vote on new videos and a bunch of other really cool stuff. Getting right into it though, talking about new versions, different versions, all that kind of thing. Now what we all hope to see are games that when they get upgraded, this is what happens. They get good stuff, they keep the good stuff from the previous ones, maybe they add things from expansions, something along those lines, something that sort of streamlines the gameplay, makes it more fun, makes it easier for new people, anything along those lines. And that's essentially what I went with when I made this list. I wanted to find ones that I essentially enjoy newer editions more than I enjoy older editions. That said, as always, please let me know what you guys think about this. What are your favorite edition upgrades? There's obviously a lot of them that I don't have on this particular list. There's a lot that are great that just didn't make my particular cut. So please let me know what you think in the comments below, but without further ado, we'll get started with my number 5. At number 5, I've got Cash and Guns. This is a super fun bank robbery, criminal, shoot 'em up type game where you have foam guns that you're literally pointing at your best friends. It's a great social interactive game that makes for a fun time during a regular game night, whether at an FLGS or hosting a night, whatever it happens to be. For all of these games, I'm going to be showing you guys the first edition, assuming that I have it, or whatever the previous edition was. And in this case, this was the first edition, and the second edition came out not too long ago, and it added a lot more different types of loot, a lot more abilities, and just more, which is good. It's great. Now this particular edition has the Yakuza expansion, which I also own, but it didn't get included in the second edition, but I find that the second edition is a lot more streamlined and it's a lot more fun, especially for newer players. You also have a lot more strategies to win in the end. That said, this game is lower on the list because it's just not bad, right? This was one of the first hobby games that I ever played, and I still love it to this day. I still bust out my first edition when I'm playing at home or at an FLGS, and we always have fun with it. But regardless, Cash and Guns, my number 5. At number 4, I've got an infamous game on my channel, Acquire. I always complain about this game in all sorts of different contexts, including this one. This is the Wizards of the Coast edition of Acquire, and it very recently got an update to a new edition that brought back the tents. That's right, if you guys have ever seen me complain about this game, you know the original Avalon Hill version, or the one before this, had little plastic pieces that you could put on top of a grid. Now, essentially the idea of this game is that you're building out companies by placing things that are on a grid, kind of like in Battleship where you have A1 blah 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 blah, and once you get two together you now have a company. The problem with this game is you just have little cardboard squares on a flat piece of cardboard, so that means everything gets shuffled around and it's really frustrating. New edition of this game doesn't do that, and I love it. Love, love, love it. That said, it's lower on the list just because that was the biggest issue, and even though it got fixed, it was still just one thing, and the rest of the game is actually pretty fun still. But that said, Acquire, my number 4. At number 3, I've got Kingsburg. For those of you who haven't seen it on my channel before, Kingsburg has an expansion called To Forge a Realm that adds a lot of really interesting strategic maneuvering, as well as altering the base game in specific ways to make it a little bit more interesting and replayable. For example, you get asymmetric starting abilities, you also get a little bit more control at the end of each round for what the king is sending, and you can change your building capabilities, which is all great, and again, it makes it replayable, it makes it a lot more fun, all of that kind of stuff. So it's one of my favorite expansions by far. That said, Kingsburg 2nd Edition, which I do not have, adds in the expansion to the base game. So you don't need the expansion anymore, because everything is already in there. And that's why this is so much higher on my list, because the expansion just added so much that it essentially made the first edition with the expansion completely obsolete, as with a few of the other games that I'll talk about. But that said, Kingsburg, along with To Forge a Realm getting upgraded to 2nd edition, is my number 3. At At number 2, I've got Cosmic Encounter, my favorite game of all time. Specifically, the Avalon Hill edition. Now you can tell that my box is, to say the least, has seen better days. The fact is that I did play this a lot. I do love this game, and this was the first edition of the game that I ever bought. But the Fantasy Flight one blows this one completely out of the water. It truly does. And there's several reasons for that. First off, this edition of Cosmic Encounter took away a lot of the alien powers. It also took away a lot of the capabilities that the cards gave you in various different ways. It also gave us, I mean, the pieces are okay. I'm not a big fan of them. I personally really don't care. Fantasy Flight did something really similar with having plastic ships, but it just didn't feel the same, essentially, and I don't like the way that they did the alien cards or anything like that. But the Fantasy Flight one, the way that they organized the turns, all of the different cards they have, not to mention the expansions that they added, make for an amazing gaming experience. And again, it's my favorite game of all time, hence why it's so high up on this list. Cosmic Encounter, specifically the Avalon Hill edition up to Fantasy Flight, my number 2. At number 1, I've got Twilight Imperium, specifically this edition, the 3rd edition, going up to the 4th, the new one. Now, the fact is that Twilight Imperium 3 is a wonderful game. It's incredibly strategic, it's good and heavy, it's got combat, it's got economics, it's got politics, it's got everything that you could want in a really solidly done board game. That said, there's a lot of things that it does rather poorly. Some of the things are, for example, it's difficult to tell what your individual pieces are, like what type of ships you're building, how much they cost, all the text is kind of small. There's a lot of little issues like that, not to mention the politics of it are a little bit weirder on this. So essentially, Twilight Imperium 4 blows this game out of the water. It adds everything from the 2 major expansions, which are Shards of the Throne, or something of the Throne, and Shattered Empire, I think, was the other one. Either way, it adds a lot from both of those, which greatly improved the economic and political aspects, and essentially now I actually have 2 copies of this. So this second copy that I have, you can see, is completely beat up, and that's because one of the people in my main gaming group actually bought Twilight Imperium 4, and he just gave me his old copy of TI3. Inside of this copy, it has both of the expansions as well as everything else involved. The problem is, you can see that basically this thing can talk on every single flap, blah 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 blah. So it is well loved, very well played, but still, it's an incredible game, and the fact is that I probably won't end up getting TI4 for myself, simply because somebody else in my gaming group already has it. So there's no real reason for it, but it is an incredibly well done game. Like I said, they integrate everything from the expansion so well, and they make it a much more streamlined experience, not to mention just improving the component quality a little bit, and just changing like the way the text is, and the way the images are. Just little stuff like that make all the difference for this, and it makes for a much more immersive and enjoyable gaming experience overall. Twilight Imperium 3 to 4 is my number 1. Well, everybody, that's going to be it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video of my top 5 favorite games that improved when they got a new edition or version or whatever you want to call it. That said, as always, I would love to hear what you guys have to say. What are your favorite increases? Why do you enjoy them so much? And what improved with them? I mean, there's a whole bunch of really great ones. Off the top of my head, Mansions of Madness is one that got a great 2nd edition. Same thing with A Study in Emerald. Again, that's just thinking off the top of my head. But you guys know, again, I would love hearing from you. As always, though, thank you so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.